Hello, Central Valley football fans, and welcome to 209 Prep Sports. Scott Bryant here, recording remotely as Coach Herrera is unavailable this week. As we look over the scores, there were some pretty big games that were played this week, and we're going to jump right into some of those. First of all, we're going to look at Kimball High School taking on the Merced Bears. We knew this was going to be a tough one for Kimball. But we also knew this was going to be a completely offensive played football game, as it was. Final score: Bears edge Kimball 51-50. Kimball, I don't think enough can be said about the season that they had this year, led by quarterback Nick Coronado. This young man was just absolutely amazing. Really looking forward to see what he's going to do on the next level, because he will definitely be on the next level, as will quite a few other quarterbacks that we have in our area. But Coronado was 15-35 for 219 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He also had 5 carries for 34 yards and another touchdown. So, Coronado is a young man that we've talked about quite a bit on this show. He's an exciting player, and there's a guarantee that he's going to put the ball in the end zone multiple times every night he steps on the field. He had some pretty good support on the ground from Sebastian Tate. He had 7 carries for 61 yards and a touchdown, as well as Nance and Lychak both contributing, between the two of them close to 100 yards on the ground as well. Receiving-wise, you had Willie Clifton, had 2 receptions for 57 yards. Mason Rivera, senior, he had 10 receptions, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dylan Anderson had 2 for 17 and a touchdown, followed up by Eric Gordon, had 1 reception for 11 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, you had Darius Doyle. He's only a sophomore. He comes off the field with 10 tackles, and then Dylan Anderson getting it done on both sides. He had 17 total tackles. So defensively, there was some good play, but that's a lot of that's 101 points scored in a football game. So the highlight really was on the offense here. But, just want to give a lot of credit to Kimball and all the players on the team, the coaching staff. What a fantastic year the Kimball Jaguars had. It's fun to follow you guys this year, and really looking forward to see what Kimball has in store for next year. Next game that I want to spend a little bit of time on is the Escalon-Ripon game. We knew this was going to be a highlight game of the week. Anytime Escalon plays Ripon, we know it's going to be a hell of a game. And it was going into halftime. Escalon was ahead 17-10, but then second half they really locked it down defensively and end up winning this game 34-10. Ripon really had a great season this year, making it to the semifinals, and then running into an opponent like Escalon that you've played earlier in the year. This was, it's tough to play the same team a couple times during the same season, but hats off to Ripon, heck of a season, and we'll be looking forward to see what lies ahead for them in the future. We had, for Escalon, we didn't have any stats from Ripon, and we usually don't, but from Escalon, we had Donovan Rosevink. He's a sophomore quarterback. Get to watch this kid for 2 more years. He had 7 completions on 14 attempts, 158 yards, and threw for 2 touchdowns. Getting it done on the ground, we had Riker Peters, a junior, coming back, 22 carries, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns. Logan Anderson, a kid that we like to watch carry the ball. He's only a junior, 8 carries for 61 yards. Bautista, 3 carries for 23 yards. And then the other, Jameen Miller, 2 carries for 20 yards. This Escalon team is a team that's heavy with players that are returning next year. And it's going to be fun to watch them for another year. Receiving-wise, we had Logan Anderson had 2 receptions, 25 yards. Bautista contributed again with 1 reception for 30 yards. Owen Nash, a junior, 1 reception, 56 yards, and a touchdown. I imagine by now Owen probably has much better stats than his dad did. No offense there, but Dad was a heck of a player and even a better wrestler. Defensively, you had really kind of by committee, you had all kinds of players kind of scattering across the field. Caden Gonzalez, he's one of the few that won't be returning. He led the team with 10 tackles. And then a couple more players, Tyler Medina, Jameen Miller, and Nathan Chavez, as well as Riker Peters, all contributing to get it done. So at the end of the day, you've got Escalon moving on. Ripon, hell of a season for you guys this year. Escalon walks away with this with a 34-10 win. Moving on, St. Mary's Rockland. This is one that I'm sure we'll probably be talking about for a while. Rockland, the number one team, number one seed coming through, taking on a very good St. Mary's team. One of the things about St. Mary's is they, regardless of how they start the season, they're always going to be tough at the end of the year. It's a very well coached team. Coach Franks does a great job with his staff. They are a team that's always going to make a run for it late in the year. I don't know the details of this game in terms of I didn't attend it, but I'm sure Coach Herrera is going to have some things to say about it. But final score: Thunder 51, Rams 48. I did follow it on the tracker on Max Preps, and I know this thing came down to the wire. But hats off to Rockland for continuing on and making it to the championship game. Highlight St. Mary's here a little bit. You had Cruz Herrera at quarterback. He was 7 of 13 for 60 yards and touchdown. Then rushing-wise, we had Jayden Marshall carry the ball 11 times, 113 yards. Jason Calvin, a junior, he carried the ball 8 times for 74 yards and a touchdown. And then Asante Carter had 24 carries for 130 yards and 4 touchdowns, really leading the way for the Rams. And we'll get to see Asante for 2 more years. It's going to be exciting watching this young man play. Receiving-wise, Jayden Marshall, UCLA bound. He was only able to have 1 reception. So Rockland did a good job of shutting down the passing game, which really is one of the strengths of St. Mary's. But like I said, we'll get some more input from Coach Herrera here very soon on this. Moving on to defensively, you had Andrew Andrade. He had 10 tackles. Hampton, freshman, he had 8 tackles. Devin Harwell had 6 tackles. Brian Reynolds had 6 tackles. And then there's a whole host of Rams that had contributed on the defensive side of the football. But in the end, it was Rockland beating the Rams 51-48, a very tough, close game for the Rams. Congratulations to the Rams on having a heck of a season. We're going to talk about some of their all-league selections here in a few minutes, and it's no surprise that they've got a lot of names on that list, and we'll cover that here in just a few minutes. Next game we want to kind of talk about a little bit. We don't have a whole lot of stats on, but the Oakdale Mustangs take on the Patterson Tigers. They end up winning 33-7. Oakdale is a lot like St. Mary's. You can't gauge where they're going to be at the end of the season by the way that they play at the beginning of the season. But this Trent Merzon team, as in all the teams that he coaches, is going to always make a long run in the playoffs. And you just come to expect that from the Oakdale Mustangs and what they do down there. But real quick, because they did highlight their stats, I just want to go over a couple of things here for Patterson, which, by the way, Patterson had a tremendous year. We've talked about the teams on the west side, the Gustines, the Orristemba, the Pattersons, and how they are making an impact like they had, in recent years that really contribute to the strength of Central Valley football. But the Patterson Tigers were led by Jacob Guevara. He had 6 completions on 20 attempts. Unfortunately, did not get in the end zone passing-wise, but he did have 5 carries for 77 yards and a rushing touchdown. But congratulations to the Patterson Tigers on a tremendous year, and we'll be talking about the Oakdale Mustangs as we move on into championship week. Next game we're going to spend a little bit of time on. Central Catholic has just really got it running on all cylinders. They ran into a very tough Lodi team a couple of weeks ago. If anything, I think that just made them stronger. They end up taking on the Antelope Titans in the next round, and this was from start to finish, this was all Central Catholic. Final score was 35-0. Led by Tyler Wentworth, the sophomore quarterback. He had 4 completions on 6 attempts for 122 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a really great quarterback rating. And then Aiden Taylor, senior running back, he had 18 carries, 132 yards for 3 touchdowns. Receiving-wise, you had Zavala had 1 reception. It was a touchdown for 26 yards. And Nolan Crosdale had 3 receptions, 96 yards, and a touchdown. And as always, I think one of the things that, we talk about Central Catholic and in a game like this where they score 35 points, there's a lot to be said about their offense. But I know that Central Catholic always has a tough defense and obviously it showed by blanking their opponent this week. But there was a lot of kids that got it done for Central Catholic. Nolan Crosdale had 5 tackles. Trace Hernandez, a sophomore, had 5 tackles. Brooklyn Cheek had 5 tackles. Figueroa, had 5 tackles, and then Aiden Taylor, senior, he had 5 tackles as well. So congratulations to Central Catholic getting it done, moving on to the next round of the playoffs, and I'm sure they're going to have a great game as they move forward. Couple other scores we want to talk about here. Vista Del Lago plays a very tough Vanden team. Vanden runs away with this thing by a score of 67-27. LeGrand ends up winning their playoff game against Mariposa. I picked Mariposa. I'm a Mariposa fan. I had picked them to win this game, but congratulations to LeGrand for really stepping up and taking this one away, 37-20. Hillmar takes on a very tough Castle Roble team. But again, this is another program, and I probably sound like a broken record, that the further they go, the stronger they get. And a very well-coached Hillmar team. We've got stats for Hillmar. Castle Roble didn't put anything in. But passing-wise, we had Jason Penmantel with 7-13 for 2 touchdowns, 151 yards. Rushing-wise, we had Brock John Perry, had 14 carries, 46 yards. He punches it in 2 times. Jason Penmantel carried it 10 times for 76 yards and two touchdowns. Receiving wise, you had Brock John Perry, 1 reception, 49 yards. That ended up in a touchdown. And then Derek Taylor Jr. had 4 receptions for 93 yards and a touchdown. Getting it done on the defensive side of the ball, you had Brock John Perry. We're going to talk about him quite a bit. I'm sure he's going to have a tremendous impact in next week's game. But he had 11 tackles. Gerardo Ponce had 5 tackles. Luis Vargas had 5 tackles. Westmoreland had 6 tackles. Derek Taylor had 7 tackles. Jason Pimentel, 6 tackles. Noel Lopez, 5 tackles. And then there was a lot of other contributors as well. But really, this was all, from start to finish, this was all Hillmar Yellow Jackets. They were blanking them in at halftime, and Castle Robles was able to punch it in at the end and get a 2-point conversion. Final score, Hillmar 41, Castle Robles 8. We had Woodland Christian beating Esparto 36-22, a little bit outside of our area that we cover, but Esparto does play in the Sierra, plays against Linden. Linden beat them this year, but very strong performance from Esparto. Moving on to Manteca Lincoln. So Manteca, again, it's exciting to see so many of our local teams doing well. And again, if you follow this show, you know that we have a tendency to talk about some really special players in our area that we know are going to move on. And, one that we talk about quite a bit is Blake Nicholson. When he's not in the lineup, it truly adversely affects Manteca, not to take away from any of the other players, but he is a very impactful player, and you'll see in this game it was no different. Playing the Zebras of Lincoln from Lincoln, California. Lincoln having a very good year this year, but they just ran into a buzzsaw. Manteca ends up winning this 28-3. We had contributions at quarterback from 2 different junior quarterbacks, each throwing for a touchdown. James Dennis. Actually, he might have, I'm not sure if he's a quarterback or running back, but James Dennis had 1 completion for 16 yards, which was a touchdown, and Hudson Wyatt had 2 completions for 17 yards, also throwing for a touchdown. But the story here, Blake Nicholson doing what he always does. He's a junior. We're going to get to see this kid play again next year. He had 28 carries for 122 yards, 2 touchdowns. We're really excited to see him moving forward. On the defensive side of the ball, we didn't have any statistics from Manteca, but looking forward to seeing them playing in the championship next week. But again, the final score: Manteca Buffaloes 28, Lincoln Zebras, or as they're called now, the Fighting Zebras, end up on the short end of the stick on this one. Another game that we had high hopes for being a great game, and as it turns out, it really was. Argonaut plays Livingston, and Livingston's one of those teams that Frost has talked about on this show before. That's kind of an up and coming team, if you will, but was a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people. But they had a hell of a season this year. Livingston ends up losing this one. Mustangs prevail 37-24. We don't have any statistics on Livingston, but we'll jump right into Argonaut. Bo Davis, senior quarterback, was 4 of 4 for 68 yards and a touchdown. On the receiving side, Caleb McElfish had 11 receptions. I'm sorry. On the ground, Caleb McElfish had 11 carries for 37 yards, a touchdown. Colby Eckhart had 7 carries for 7 yards, a touchdown. And Mateo Flores had 10 carries, 45 yards, and for a touchdown. And then, and I apologize, Randy, if I'm saying this wrong, but Randy Fage had 1 reception for 25 yards and a touchdown. Call me out on that if I'm mispronouncing your name, because we're going to get to talk about you guys next week as you're moving on to the next round of the playoffs. In terms of defensive statistics, we had Josiah Sanders had 6 tackles. Randy Fage had 8 tackles. Caleb McElfish had 10 tackles. Colby Eckhart with 6. Bo Davis getting it done on both sides of the ball, 8 tackles. Spigarelli had 8 tackles. Mateo Flores with 5, and Chase Yosheim with 5. Again, guys, if I'm mispronouncing your names, please, by all means, correct me. We want to make sure we get your names pronounced right, because we really enjoy talking about what you guys are getting done on the field, and we want to highlight you in the right way. So at the end of the day, Mustangs are moving on by a score of 37-24. One other game that occurred on Saturday in our section, Jesuit plays a very tough Folsom team. Kind of a little bit, not really a surprise here, but the score is very close. Folsom ends up winning this game 22-21. As we move on to the games that are going to be occurring this weekend, I'm excited. There's some really good games that are on the slate that are going to be fun to watch. We plan on, between Chris and myself, we plan on attending a couple of these games. We look forward to hearing from you guys. Would love to have some input on what you would like to hear moving forward on our show. Any input you have, we just want to make this better, so we're doing a better job of highlighting you guys. But Manteca takes their 9-3 record up against a tough Oakdale team, 9-2. I'm curious how many times these two teams have played throughout history, but this is going to be a heck of a matchup. Super excited to see this game. Woodland Christian, it looks to take their perfect record of 11-0 against a LeGrand team that upended my pick to move on last week, but LeGrand's at 7-5, and then you've got Rockland, another team that's looking to stay perfect, taking on a team that's, I think, is surging at the right time in Folsom. On Saturday, the slate of games that we're going to have here in the finals, we've got Vanden and Merced. Vanden comes in at 10-2, taking on the Merced Bears at 9-3. And another interesting game is going to be the Argonaut Mustangs taking on an 11-2 Rosemont team at 1 o'clock. And then Escalon Hilmar, 6 o'clock at St. Mary's. Escalon 11-1, Hilmar 11-2. This is going to be the clash of the Titans for for this division. And then a team that we talked about, and I think they're going to have their hands full, but a team that we talked about that we knew really had a great shot at making the final is Monterey Trail. They're 8-5, and they're peaking at the perfect time. They went through an early season schedule that was really rough, and I think that's why they're playing so well now. But man, this Central Catholic team at 11-1 sure looks good. It's going to be a heck of a game. Friday, Saturday is going to be some really good football in the Central Valley. Look forward to hopefully running into some of the people that enjoy our show, and it's going to be exciting. So one last thing before I get going here, I know as we're winding down the season, our podcast probably gets shortened a little bit each week just because our slate of games goes down. But as the all league selections come out, we want to highlight these. This week, we're going to highlight basically two different leagues. One is going to be the Sierra Delta All-League Football selections. And we're just going to talk about one team because just one team falls in our purview here. But making first team for the Linden Lions, we had a senior, Alex Herrera, first team at quarterback, Joe Cowan, a junior, first team at running back, Jacob Alantis, a junior defensive lineman, first team. Tony Cowan, a sophomore defensive lineman, first team. Going to be exciting to watch this kid play for a couple more years. Andrew Crafton makes it as an offensive lineman on the first team. Jordan Sherman, wide receiver. Miles Flint, a senior defensive back. And then Lucas Davis, a senior wide receiver. So, rightfully so, this is a Linden team that wins their first championship, really the first time they're in playoffs since 2004, but wins their first championship since 2004. You would expect to see them kind of dominate that first team all league. So congratulations to those guys from Linden that made that all league selection. Next one we want to move on to is the Tcal. This is again the names that we're gonna talk about on here. Not a surprise at all. We'll talk about the kind of the individual awards first. MVP Jayden Marshall from St. Mary's, as we all know, he's going to be playing for the Bruins at UCLA next year. Offensive Player of the Year Jonah Coleman, well deserved, from Lincoln High School. Defensive Player from Lincoln High School, Jamal Johnson. These two guys really did a great job of leading the Trojans and making their season spectacular. Offensive lineman. So there were three selections, and for good reason. You had Hayden Jones from St. Mary's, Ivan Hernandez from Lincoln, and Nathan Bishop from Lodi. I don't think offensive linemen, and this is coming from an offensive lineman, I don't think they get the credit that they deserve. We always talk about the quarterbacks, wide receivers, the linebackers. We talk about a lot of positions like that, but because there's no statistics really kept on offensive linemen, we don't get to talk about them enough. Defensive line player of the year, Jason Jacks from St. Mary's. Kicker, Julian Garibay from Lincoln. Punter, Andrew Passmore from Tcal. Utility player of the year was Adam Schallberger, the quarterback from Lodi High School. And then the coach of the year, George Duenas from Lodi. I don't think you could have made a better selection on coach of the year. George and his whole staff have just done a tremendous job. He's got Coach Bishop, one of the best offensive line coaches, probably defensive line as well, in the area, if not the best. And so hats off to Lodi coaching staff. These are well-deserved awards. Moving on to the Tcal first team. At quarterback from St. Mary's, you had Cruz Herrera, running back Asante Carter from St. Mary's, running back Bryce Powell from Lodi, running back Austin Hosey from Tracy, tight end Timmy Copeland from Lodi, and this I think is also he's obviously a great tight end, but I think he's also a great blocker too. He's going back to what I was just saying about Coach Bishop teaching these guys to block really was the staple of Lodi. Wide receiver Naz Danielson from St. Mary's, wide receiver Jason Calvin from St. Mary's, wide receiver Tyror Deloney from Lincoln, Slot, Dwayne Thomas from Lodi. Slot, Brandon Stout from Lodi. Offensive lineman, Elijah Iremia from St. Mary's. Offensive line, Amir Ansel from Lodi. Defensive tackle, defensive end, Ryan Gaia from St. Mary's. Defensive tackle, Stephen Whiting from Lodi. Defensive tackle, Tyler Howard Thompson from Lincoln. Defensive tackle, Kyler Hickman from West. Linebacker, Andrew Andrade from St. Mary's. And linebacker, Tristan Quintana from Lincoln. Also at linebacker, Isaac Salinas from Tracy. Defensive back, Elias Castro from Tcal. Defensive back, Brooks Wheatley from St. Mary's. Defensive back, Ezreal Vasquez from Lincoln. Defensive back, Jamorian Briggs from Lincoln. Defensive back, Xavier Moreno from Tokay. And defensive back, Dante Clark from Lincoln. So Tcal very well represented by all of their teams. But again, being the offensive lineman that I am, hats off to Lodi High School. I think that was a great representation of those guys in the Tcal selections. Congratulations to St. Mary's for the long run they had in the playoffs. And we'll be looking forward to more of these all-league selections as they come out, and we'll be discussing them on the show. But that's going to do it for me for this week. We've got, like I said, a slate of games coming up this weekend that are going to be super exciting. I'm going to be in attendance, one, probably two of them. Really looking forward to seeing these games. But that does it for us. Thanks, everyone that listens to our show. Please reach out with any comments or anything that you would like to see us do moving forward. But thanks for listening.